All right, welcome back to the channel. Hey friends, it's T and a why you should read video combined with a live stream discussion of the Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham. And for everybody on our we're going to do our best to be coherent. The first thing I say before we get started is that Alan will be joining a little bit later on 11. And second, down in the description box to all three of my YouTube channels. You should support them and subscribe and watch their videos because they're awesome and they have cool opinions about books. So, Pete.
Hello, I am Ponderings of Pete. I have a channel that I post to every 6 months, and that hopefully that will change. I love the series. It's one of my favorite series of all time. Only recently dethroned, but still, I mean, recently? That was over a year ago. Anyways, Dandelion Dynasty is a separate thing.
How dare you talk about Dandelion Dynasty during LPQ chat? You can talk about it somewhere else. Sorry for interrupting.
Look,
go ahead.
This is tangents. Anyways, Long Price Quartet is amazing, and everybody should read it. I read it I had a read-along that I did after hearing Alan rave along with it, and I got to talk with a lot of people, and now I just love talking to people about Long Price Quartet, because it's great.
No lies detected. Anitha.
I think if you guys watch my channel, you all know how much I love LPQ. I mean, I read, I found this actually, I found Alan's channel, I joined Discord and I heard him talking about LPQ a lot. And Pete immediately announced his read along and I joined. I read the prologue of the first book and I know I'm going to love that book and I know Ota was my favorite character. That's enough. That prologue itself me and Daniel Abraham became my favorite author and LPQ is still, even after 3 years, it is still my favorite top one fantasy series ever written actually. Price of Spring, final book Price of Spring is the best book ever written, at least for me.
And Ota, Ota is your least favorite character, right?
He is my favorite character. I'm not sure if it is only for me. Tori, you are cutting actually. There is a lot of breaks in your voice.
Being spotty, so I apologize. Is it still break quite a bit? Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to go.
We can hear only 2-3 words out of 10 words.
Okay.
All right. So, why should we read this, right? Anitha, you wanna take it away? By why should somebody read LPQ besides just yes?
Okay. Sure. Thank you. Pete, LPQ is highly thematic actually. That's the one I connected with it a lot because even from my childhood, I am big on, consequences of actions, what we did. I get so pissed if people don't face those consequences, don't own up to it. But this book is all about consequences, the price we pay for what we did. That's what made me fall in love with this series. But this series is also one of the best in character work actually. Every character has agency. This is a patriarchal society and this is a master class in how to write female characters in a patriarchal society, how to write male characters in a patriarchal society without traumatizing readers. I'm not saying there are not traumatic elements in this series. I mean, in first book itself, halfway through the first book, big thing happens. It was hard for me to get through it. It was very traumatic, but there is a reason why that scene is there. There is a reason for every dark element. They are not there for any shocking value. I mean, you must We can talk about it later, actually.
Yeah.
Go ahead. We
Yeah.
all should read this book. We all should read.
Absolutely. Yeah, I echo a lot of what you're saying. Like the concept of prices of consequences is really strong in this series, and it goes throughout the entire series. Like you'll have choices in the first book that are, um, you see the consequence, some of the consequences for all the way in the last book, which is really a little bit of a sounds like a little bit of a slow burn, but like there's short term consequences, there's long term consequences, and I think like at its core being about these two guys, Ota and Mati, and how their lives have intertwined and how their decisions have affected each other, how some have succeeded, some have failed, and the choices that they were forced to make. The hard choices, I think, is the things that really resonate with me, of just like having to make these terrible decisions where there isn't a clear right answer, unless there's this strong, unless you have a strong. No, I don't want to say it that way. But there at first glance there is no clear right answer, and you seeing characters struggle with these decisions, and then having to eventually make the decisions is really, it just resonates with me. It's the themes of leadership and your decisions affecting so many different people, whether it's down the line or immediately. It's just something that, you know, scratches an itch for me. And seeing the personal side of this as well, like it's not just like, guys in leadership making these decisions that will affect thousands of people and they're detached. You really see the human sides of these people, whether they're in leadership or not. Like you see the struggles that they go through, and they are very, very well written. And it's compact too. Like we gotta plug the length for Alan. Abraham does what other authors do in 5 very large books in 1,200 pages. Like this is the length of one Stormlight, and he does more than Sanderson does in
Every word he uses, actually, not a single word is wasted while telling the story. We have to focus. We can't skim read. This is not something you can skim read. You can read fast. You have to take time with it because every sentence carries a lot.
Yep. And it's just great.
Yeah. One of the biggest flaws I heard, Tori is back. Okay.
We'll see if this works. Can you guys see me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you.
Okay.
Much more clear.
Thank you, phone. Guys, I don't know what's going on with my internet right now. I apologize, but I left my channel in capable hands, so.
Go ahead. We just paused after talking about why we should read from our POV. Why?
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I read LPQ because it was one of Alan's favorite series, and the way that he talked about it made me feel like, okay, there's got to be something here, and I definitely want to try more, new series and things that are a little bit outside my comfort zone. And I was very intimidated to start it, which kind of looking back surprises me because I was expecting something a lot more dense when I started it. And I read it, and I think by probably halfway through the first book, I was like, this is incredible. And I'm shocked that I love it as much as I do, because I'm typically a very action-oriented reader. I like, a lot of things happening. I tend to lean toward the military fantasy side of things. And it was just such a beautiful, rich character study, which spoke to me very strongly as a character-driven reader. I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And throughout the whole 4-book series, I think I can safely say that the second book is my favorite, but that's a very, I love all 4 of them, and it was hard to pick one for my top 10 last year. I love, and I know you guys I caught glimpses of you guys chatting about the the effects of decisions over a lifetime. And that's something that I've discovered that I really, really love in fantasy series, where you have these characters who make decisions and you get to see the generational consequences of those decisions and how that changes not just their little sphere, but also the nation they live in and even beyond that, and just how one person's decisions ripple outward. And that was, I think, one of my favorite parts about the series. The character work is also incredible. And what shocked me was how profound the prose is, how well written the characters are, and that he does it in such a short space of time. Because, LPQ altogether is the size of, a longer fantasy book, which is incredible. 250-page books, and it feels like you've been through a lifetime in almost every single book, and especially with the whole series. So that was something that I really loved, and I've only found in a couple of other series that I read 2 of them this year, and they could not be more different. And Anitha's going to be mad at me for putting them in the same sentence. But I read LPQ and Greenbone Saga last year, and what I found was similar between the 2 of them that I really loved was that same kind of like generational consequences and how decisions over that lifetime affect the world around the characters. And through reading those 2 series, I realized that was something I really enjoyed. So, yeah. And the characters are phenomenal.
Yeah. I want to add one more point. I am a character driven, very heavily character driven reader, at least until LPQ. I mean, that is one of the main reasons I loved LPQ, because characters are so good. But this is the series which made me realize how important plot to any book, because while reading the final book, Price of Spring, the way Abraham tied up everything, including with what happened in the first book, he made one cohesive story, all 4 books together. I mean, that made me realize how much I appreciate the book if I also like the plot. As it, if plot and characters together, that makes me my favorite. This series made me realize that. Also, this is a very uh, this is, it might look corny, but I want to say that, when in movies, when people look at art and feel something, I was like, what? I just sit as a stone. I don't understand at all. But after reading Price of Spring, I understand what they felt. Actually, this is how they must have felt. I mean, LPQ was art to me. I cannot say, I don't have words other than that to say it, and to explain how I felt when I read Price of Spring and the whole LPQ.
Yeah, that's one thing about this series that I think is interesting, and certainly, like I mentioned before, I haven't done a video review for it on my channel yet. Not that I haven't wanted to. It's that it's literally taken me this long to get to a point where I felt like I even was able to articulate what I enjoyed about it. Like I just kind of had to sit there in catharsis for months, because I didn't even know how to break down what it was about this series that really hit me so hard. And I'm curious if you guys have any ideas in terms of like, why do you think this series is hard to put into words when you're talking about what it is about it that you love so much? Or is it not? Maybe
that's a good question, because see, every series actually, I don't even remember the back of the first book, what was there, what sold me. But every book actually, if we have to give summary, we can give actually summary or premise of that book, synopsis of that book in couple of lines. This book, it doesn't I if we think about the plot of the first book, actually I don't think I'm capable of putting it in 2 lines without talking about the culture of what is this whole kingdom name, Kite.
The kite, yeah.
Yeah, the kite.
Yeah, without talking about the culture of Kite, or without talking about the magic system, it's very difficult to uh, tell the synopsis. That's how I feel. I want to give the whole background without spoilers. I want to give the whole culture, explain the whole culture, why these kids go to that school, what is water and at. They're not spoilers. At the same time, I want to tell paragraphs of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I come up against a similar thing where I want to tell them all about the world, but for me, finding out about the world is such an integral part to my enjoyment of this book, of just figuring out, oh, that's what that is, and either finding real world, you know, thing parallels in a weird way, or just understanding the tragedy of certain parts of the world building as they come up. And I definitely do talk about the world to some people, but like it's almost like I kind of regret talking about it after I talk about it, because I wish they could have that experience of just discovering it as they read it for the first time.
That's something I feel like with some series, I can give people a little bit of context without it changing their experience of reading the book for the first time.
Yeah.
This one, it's like there's so many things that I feel like you have to experience them for yourself. You have to discover them. And some, I'm less spoiler gun shy, I think, than a lot of people. But in this series, I would definitely say keeping yourself as blind as possible going in is going to help you. And like, reach out to people if you get stuck somewhere and you're confused. Definitely reach out to somebody on the way. But I don't feel like that's something that you need context for going in.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, like, there are some things that like are purposely, I don't know, specifically with the magic system, there's a lot of things that are purposely soft.
Yes.
That like I've seen some people bounce off of, but like that happens in a lot of fantasy with soft magic systems, where people just like want to know all the details because they're used to really hard and explained hard magic systems, like with Sanderson.
Yeah.
But, like, you'll as the books go on, you'll understand more and more, but you only understand what you need to, basically. Trust the process.
Yeah.
In terms of soft magic systems too, I think sometimes a harder or soft magic system is just a harder or soft magic system because it is, depending on the book. And I think for LPQ, that soft magic system actually, and this isn't a spoilery thing, but like it's something that I think adds a lot to the mystery and the tension of the series, is the fact that it is such a soft magic system, and that actually matters in how you experience the book, instead of it just being, oh, it's just a soft magic system. Like, no, it's a soft magic system, and that makes it more tense as you're going through, because you don't understand everything.
Also, this is one of the most unique magic systems I have ever read. Of course, I haven't read all of fantasy. So far, what I have read, this is so unique. I nowhere I came across similar to this. That this is not spoiler, right? Talking about magic system. Okay, that giving sentience, like human shape to idea. So, I mean, how do someone get such an idea? It's just brilliant, actually.
Yeah.
And tying up that sentient being to the original creator of that sentient being, and it involves not spell, it involves grammar, it involves poetry. And the only thing that makes me think in this series, actually consider, step back and thought about it, is I'm just thinking whether it's spoilers or not. What happened in the prologue, actually, the strict discipline of these teachers, the practice with which they teach these kids will be justified later.
Yeah.
Hey, Ellen.
Hello, Ellen. Welcome to the stream.
Good morning.
We just went through talked about why people should read LPQ. We gave each of our thoughts on it and kind of how we came to the series. So would you like to, I'm so sorry you're sick. Would you like to share your why you should read briefly, spoiler free LPQ and how you found it?
And I recommend, I am the arbiter of truth. That's why. There is no series that I think about more since starting booktube than Long Press Quartet. Like I just don't. Like I think about a lot of series a lot of times, but I think about Long Press Quartet all the time. It has just been that impactful to me. I've never seen generational characters done this way, and I didn't realize how much I like that and how not often that is done in fantasy. I think way more fantasy should do the generational take. And this, following these two men through 60 years of life, the two men basically, but like other characters, 60 years of life, and watching the nature of friendship change. And it is one of the most complicated, complex explorations of what it means to love another human being, and not just in a romantic way, like just like the full gamut of feelings with friendship. Like I don't understand when, yes, LPQ is my Roman Empire. That's true. I don't understand how people like character, like, oh, I'm a character reader. Or I love like friendships and fantasy. Like I do understand if you bounce off of Shadow and Summer a little bit, I do. And you know, Kai, like I have great respect for Kai. Kai DNF the series after but the second book, which I guess I can understand it. But I personally feel that this is one of, like, if you are interested, especially if you're interested in like writing, like found family and like friendships and things like that, it's just tremendous. It has some of the most grounded, these people act like real people and they make terrible decisions that real people make. They make terrible decisions and they're not even consequential in the moment, but they're consequential over the course of a lifetime. And we make, like, there are decisions that I made 20 years ago that I am still, you know, reaping the consequences or benefit of. And it's just, you just don't see it a lot. It was something completely different than anything I'd read. And I still don't think I've read anything like it. It's just, I don't know, like the last book had me weeping, and I don't really weep at books a lot. The third book, like Abraham does things that I just didn't know authors could do, like that had the courage to do, like changing the entire, like, you know, like state of things. Like usually, I don't know, I'm just like, okay, I guess we can do that now. I love the Ondat, the idea of these abstract thoughts being made and held captive. I don't even like all the characters, but I just think the character work is tremendous, whether I like them or not. The female characters are wonderful, like wonderful. It's just, I don't know. And I came about it because I was looking for, when I was starting out on booktube, I was looking for like series that, you know, a bunch of people hadn't heard of, because I don't know what's wrong with me as a person. Like, I just don't know. I am filled with human frailty, like these characters. And it, like, anytime I see people reading things and it's nothing but like, oh, here's a who's who of the most popular books, I'm just like, I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand it. I can't do it. It rubs me the wrong way irrationally. And so I'm like, I'm going to look for stuff that name will be talking about. And I came across this. I liked the cover. Stephen Martinieri or something like that. I love his cover work. And I love the cover of Shadow and Summer with the big statues, like just Saraket, like kind of like impressionist kind of style. And I read, and this I will credit Patrick with. I saw Patrick's review of the third book on Goodreads, and he said, I've never seen anything like this. Something like that. It was incredible. I was just like, oh, okay. I'll read this series then. And I read the first 2 books, and it was 6 months before I picked up the third one, like a dodo head. And I don't know what was wrong with me. But it was just, I don't know. I am glad that I stumbled across it. Because I don't know. It is one of my favorite series of all time for sure. Sorry, that was really long. I apologize.
No, you're good. We talked for a while. To jump into a couple of the comments. Joanna says, I loved Abraham's world building in LPQ. It was never dense, but it was immersive. Yeah. For me as a reader, one of the things that I really enjoy is balance with an emphasis on characters. That's what I'm kind of discovering about myself. I don't like when, the prose is like super simple or the world building isn't there, but I love a balance of when all of those pieces feel like really strong supporting cast to the characters. And that was something in Long Price that I just felt like this book was so perfect for what I love to read. And I totally agree, Alan, with your comment about if you are a person who loves reading really deep, complex friendships in books. I think a lot of times when people say, oh, I like friendships in books, well, I like the friendships where everyone's happy all the time, or everybody's loyal all the time, or everybody makes the right decision all the time, because that makes me feel happy. And that's fine. I get that, because I like that also sometimes. But like, this is just so real in terms of, and that's something that I feel like anybody reading this series can relate to, is just how relationships change and how the decisions you make actually affect the people around you, and how that changes the relationships. And yeah, I mean, the character work in here is just S tier. It's incredible.
Yeah, the standard fantasy friendship, and again, like, this is not knocking anything, but it tends to be. I mean, it tends to just be there's people, there's friends, they're going to do something, and then there's a misunderstanding, or like they disagree on something. There's this big blowout and that kind of thing. Like, this is just it is the slow building and slow rotting of relationships. Like, it's minor things. It's these people have, like, it's not necessarily huge disagreements. It's, you can be friends with someone and love someone desperately and still be. My best friend, Finn, I love Finn. Like we've been friends since 9th grade. So for 27 years we've been friends. And there's nothing I would not do for Finn. Like the middle name of my child is Finn. Like, I'm naming it after Finn, who's not gonna have a son. Because he's done so much for me. And yet there are times when I am sitting here, and I find yesterday that my freaking mortgage payment is going up because of underestimated taxes or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm going to pay for that how? And I watch, and I'm having a kid and can't take any time off because I don't get any paternity leave. And yet my buddy Finn takes 3 weeks off for Christmas, burning only 2 days of actual leave because his job, he plays PlayStation while he's on meetings, because he can do that, because that's his job. I hate him. Like, I hate him for that. Like, I am so angry that like it isn't fair. It isn't fair. I also work hard. Like, why is my life so much more difficult than his? And yet, like, who cares? Like, I still love Finn, but there are times where I'm like, I hate you. Like, I hate you and your stupid face and your stupid ridiculous amount of time off that you get. Like, and your stupid job that you can do remote. Like I hate you, but I don't, you know what I mean? And we don't see that a lot in fantasy, like that, the pettiness of everyday humanity. And does that make me petty? Sure it does. Absolutely it does. But we're human beings, and these are the complicated feelings we have for other human beings. And I just think Abraham encompasses that so well, that I have been hard pressed to find that in anything else. And I love Dagger and the Coin. I still just don't think it's as, it's just not, it's not the same. So yeah, I cannot recommend this series enough, though I understand when people bounce off of it.
Yeah. I think that Abraham has this fundamental understanding that it feels kind of interesting that he has this fundamental understanding that two people can look at the same problem and have different opinions and still be friends. Ish.
Weird.
Depending.
Yeah. Abraham is writing the mature conversations we all wish we saw on the internet.
Yes, exactly.
The Ota-Mati relationship is it's like so similar to Hamilton and Burr in the musical Hamilton, to where it's just like you have someone who like is trying so hard, like wants so hard to be successful, like to succeed, and then someone who doesn't even want it, and it just comes naturally to them. There's no one in this discussion or in this chat that has not felt that. That is like, it is not fair. Why does that come so easily? And I am more guilty of this than most people because I'm petty and depressed. But there are still people who are like, why does talking like to people, like why is talking in front of people, like when I teach, why does that come so easily to Alan? Like there are people who say that about me. And I'm like, you should find someone else to, why? Like, no. But all of us have been there. Why is it so easy for these people? Like when we're trying and can't get it to work, and this person doesn't even appreciate it. Like didn't even appreciate it. And that complexity is it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Well, and it's not just, I think obviously the core relationship of the series, this is very present, but I think he does a really good job. Like I bounce off of books where we have a very solid, deeply complex main character, and then all of the side characters are just kind of cardboard cutouts. And what I also loved about LPQ is that every person feels as deep, even if they have less screen time, as the main kind of protagonists. And all of the different types of relationships in this, like I'm usually impressed when an author gets a relationship really right. Like everything in the series felt like that, where the romantic relationships were complex, the friendships were complex, the enemies were complex, like people that didn't like each other. I mean, there was just so many, there's just such an understanding of human experience in this series. And I think one of the things I found was that the only other series that I've ever read that hit me that hard in terms of the characters and the understanding of human experience was Malazan. And this was the first time after reading that I was like, oh my gosh, somebody else can do this too. Like to this level, not that other authors can't, but just to this level. And I'm still thinking about it.
No,
as well.
like Mati, I don't like Mati, but Mati is one of the most interesting characters in fantasy that I've read because of like what a complex character. And I don't like Mati. No one likes Mati. Like, how can you?
I like Mati.
Good for you, Tori. Good. Like, I wish I was more Ota than I was Mati. Like I wish. I really do. I really do. But it's like those two characters, so complex. And then like Kian, like good. And what everyone who's read this has said, I think almost everyone, the fact that there's a love triangle in the first two books that doesn't bother people says something about Abraham's facility with this. Is that like no one likes love triangles because we know what's going to happen. We know the tropes that are going to come out. We know, like we've paddled down that river before. But he takes this and makes it incredibly real. The real problem with love triangles in fantasy is that I don't think they're very realistic. These happen in real life all the time. And fantasy love triangles bear no resemblance to what they are actually like. And I think they are so much better done in this. They're much more realistic, even though the circumstances surrounding them are like, well, no, like people aren't dying left and right in like our everyday life, you know, like, oh crap, well, I guess my brother's dead or whatever. And yet, like the love triangles themselves are very realistic in how those things are portrayed and the things that people are trying to get. Why is there a love triangle? What need is this other person fulfilling that this other person cannot meet, that they think that they're going to get it over here? None of that exists in most fantasy love triangles, in my experience. I'm not saying that I've read all of them, and I'm not saying that no other ones are done well. But I don't think that's the rule at all. I think that's the exception for sure.
And I like the way he made us understand the, why there is a love triangle, the, motivation behind that, the intention behind that. There are other love triangles. I can't believe I'm saying these two in the same sentence, but for example, Twilight, I was so annoyed with that character. My God, I threw that book away. But in this, I wasn't even angry with Liat actually. I understand why she made certain decisions that nobody ever did this actually. I mean, there is an exception, Tchaikovsky in Guns of the Dawn, but in both cases, you in both cases, it completely make me understand why they made those decisions. Nobody could have done that for me.
I'm going to go through and pull a couple of comments, and then we're going to move to spoiler discussion, just so that for anybody in the chat who hasn't read LPQ and is planning to, we don't get too far into spoilers. Let's see. I do like, Joanna makes a great point. Yes, it is a soft magic system, but there are still, I think it's a very well written magic system, soft magic system. Yes, Dan, read it.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a book I would recommend to pretty much any fantasy reader, just so that they can like experience this kind of level of character building.
Before we finish this spoiler-free discussion and before we finish our recommendation, I want to talk about posing and why people turn off from that. I understand actually, especially coming from Western culture, it might be difficult for people to imagine that. But for us, actually, Asians, it's part of our life. I mean, it may not be as big as from olden days. Now we use only like namaste, this one, when we meet, even when we are praying. But we also do this touching elders' feet for blessings, something like that. Those two we still do. So for me, I mean, initially when I read that, when Abraham doesn't explain posing at all. He just says that they take a pose of welcome, they take a pose of subservience, something like that. He doesn't explain at all. So first, when he mentioned that, I definitely like, what is he talking about? Then it took me like 5 minutes to get used to that. Okay, he's talking about what we do, it is part of our culture. And also, if you watch any Asian dramas, Asian shows, or Asian movies, historical movies especially, you can catch up on that easily actually. So even though that posing put you off, I ask you all to be patient and give it a chance, at least for book one.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you for explaining that, because I do think that that's something that honestly we don't see enough of. bringing in of that kind of culture inspiration to fantasy. And that was actually something I really also loved about LPQ. As somebody who has a very deep appreciation for Asian cultures, like I really liked seeing that in here because I was so excited that it was something different, and something it was so culturally important to the characters, and it just felt like it was a very lived in world. So you walk in and it's just this very established culture where all of these things are just part of their daily life. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, and I think it added like a really nice extra layer that we don't always get in other fantasies. Like it's hard to describe someone's body language, like what Eva was saying in the comments about how it's kind of basically like a telling the person what their body language is. But also in some of the later books, it also serves as a translation thing as well. When you get people that aren't used to the poses, and then the people that are, there's a little bit of a extra undercurrent there that the people that are from outside of the Kai don't understand, which is really interesting. So you get that kind of culture clash, which is nice, really interesting to read.
Yeah.
But it was just it's another current of things, and if it's something that you're almost irritated by how frequent it can be in the first book, he does kind of take a foot off the gas from it in the later books.
Well, so it also acts as a really good way of showing how complex conversations can be in terms of what we say versus what we mean, or what we say or what we do versus what we're thinking. And I think he did a really good job of balancing, showing that subtlety there's a whole lot more impact in the sarcasm that exists in this series during conversations because of all of the aspects of how they speak to each other. So it almost makes the conversation and dialogue just that much more complex once you get used to it. Joanna says Shadow in Summer was her favorite. I loved Sarah Kett and a certain character who is only in book one. I'm 100% sure I know who that is.
Yeah, I'm very sure.
The whole series is brilliant. Great character. And yeah, that was the other thing we talked about, like how he's so good at writing different genders, but I also think like his range of ages, writing different ages of characters was incredibly well done. Let's see.
For sure.
Make sure I don't catch or didn't miss anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we can move into Matt has started the series. Awesome.
I think he read only first one
as well.
Huh?
Hopefully we've gotten John Saxon in the comics to read as well.
Yes. John there, and I know you answered this question, but for anybody watching, there are 4, and each of them are about 250 pages long. So it's like a grand total of 1,000 pages.
It's one Stormlight book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Eva. If you read He Took a Pose of XY as simply his body language suggested, it doesn't seem very different anymore from what we do in communication. Yeah, it's just a different form of dialogue tags, honestly.
I think Matt had a little bit of a good point that I feel like it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Like, because there is kind of like what you're saying about the sarcasm being a little bit more biting in some cases, or like, hey, you're not understanding what I'm saying, and which is, so it adds a little bit more than I feel like normal body language might on review.
Yeah, and I mean that's a thing where I feel like all cultures have a lot of body language expression. It's just that it is different with certain cultures than others, and just how we use body language to express ourselves.
In most of Asian cultures, of course, I can only talk about India. That is as important as words, actually, especially suppose very orthodox people or traditional people, if we go them, if we are respectful for them with our words, it's not enough. We have to show that in action too. We have to take their blessings, we have to touch their feet, or for some people this is enough. And there are a lot of things like that which is important more than words even this today.
Yeah. I'm learning Korean right now, and in the program I'm using, they talk about body language and bowing and all of that kind of stuff. And there's a difference between the degree to which you bow in terms of how polite you need to be to certain people, and how like to judge that in a public setting or whatever. And it's a very important part of that language as a whole.
Yeah, and it changes. It depends on the way we sit also. We can't sit casually, relaxed, stretching our legs in front of elders. We have to sit very in a dignified way, especially in a subservient way.
Are
I
we,
I had so many experiences where people told me to sit properly. So it is still there actually.
are we talking about poses?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is the single thing that I have heard that turns people off of the series more than anything else is the poses. And so one, I can understand if people don't like it, but at the same time, like that's what's throwing you off. The fact that they mention that, like, what about the repetitive nonsense that's in like other stuff? Like, I am not trying to invalidate other people's experiences, but I don't get it. Like, oh, it's annoying. Okay, like so is insert X thing here. I don't get people not liking it. I'm not like I mean, I understand people not liking it. I don't get like that's why you thought the book was bad. The book was bad because they take a pose of whatever. Take a pose of sit on it and rotate, Potsy. How about that one? I don't know. I don't get it. Like, and I'm not trying to be like, well, you didn't understand it, because like no one, like people aren't stupid. Like they don't not like it because they don't get that it's a language where they're communicating. They just don't like it, and I don't know why they fixate on it. I will say that in every book it gets less and less. Like I wasn't even noticing. I can't even remember it in book 3 and 4. Like I can't even remember it in the last 2 books. They use it way more. It is used the most in the first book. And then Abraham does what I really like when authors do, is trust that you remember they're doing it. Guess what? I know how they're bouncing through the streets without telling me that they pushed off a coin on the ground every single time. You've established it. Trust me that I'm going to remember that that's how they do it. And that is what that's what I really like. I like it when authors do this with dialect, rather than having like really heavy dialect in every like dialogue where it's hard to read. You give like the hint of dialect, and then just assume that we know that person's speaking in that dialect now. I just think it aids with readability, I guess, and it also keeps the page count down for sure. I don't get people's like absolute like vitriol against the poses. I like it. I think it's cool because, like Anitha's saying, you can communicate so much. When people are yelling at me, I'm taking a pose of dog on his back with his belly exposed. Please don't eat me. Absolutely. Like, I'm shrinking back like, please don't, we learn body language all the time. People think my body language is aggressive, and it's not meant to be. I just am trying to create some form of human, I don't know, facsimile. But I don't know. I like the poses. I guess.
I want to say one last thing about this criticism. I don't know. I mean, who said it? I just heard it that Abraham is lazy for not explaining things. One thing I want to say is, in one of the books, I can't even remember which book is that. Immaculate Conception was mentioned. I did not know what was that actually. I googled then, and I talked to a friend who was Catholic, and I learned that I did not expect other to explain that to me, and I don't call other lazy for that. I don't mind putting that effort. So, you know, I don't understand. This is not an attack on anyone, but I think we have to be open-minded to learn other culture and accept it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree, Anitha. Let's move into spoiler discussion so that we can spoil everything and talk about whatever we want. So to anyone in the chat, we are going to move to spoilers now. So we will be talking full spoilers for all 4 books. Probably we'll end up talking mostly about the first ones, but we might not. So you've been warned.
Definitely not. It's going to be 3 and 4. We're going to talk more about the ending.
Okay, so we are going to move to the spoiler discussion. You've all been warned. All right. Anybody want to start with that?
I do.
Yes.
Anitha,
Okay, Alan is the only one. Alan is the only one I give way for this book. So
stand down. The fact that Mati wants to do the right thing and cannot, the biggest thing is when we see in book 3 that Daniel Abraham has planned every bit of this out from the prologue of the first book is absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. When Mati screws up everything because he never should have been a poet. But boy, Ota, like when they're kids, Ota spoils the game. And because the game was spoiled, Mati got through when he never would have before. That is one of the like, maybe not first, but most profound times that I've ever been like, holy crap. This guy's like, absolutely. What is happening right now is a direct consequence of what happened in that prologue. A direct consequence. Because this kid does not have, like, we see it and we're like, yeah, that's right, Ota. Like, fight the power. Because those guys are douchebags. No. They're trying to make sure. They are trying to make sure that only people with the correct temperament are able to wield this kind of power. And we see exactly what happens when people of Mati's temperament can wield this kind of power. And even then, it's so hard to hate Mati because we understand exactly why he's doing what he's doing. He is just trying to help. He is just trying to be as good as Ota, which comes naturally to him. Ota doesn't even want the responsibility. Everything Mati even is even, it's not fair. Mati's even like, it's not fair. Like, you never had to work for anything, Ota. Like, and I'm sitting here like burning everything I have to try to do this. And everything I do fails. And then he tries to fix it.
Bless
and
him.
Then, rather than accepting responsibility, rather than just being like, it's my fault, he tries to fix it again. It's just like, we're just like, how is this possible? What are you doing? What are you doing? How can you not learn from this? And we know people, we all know people like this. We've all been like this. Like, no, I got it. Let me do it. Let me fix it. And then just all of that, like Mati's like deteriorating relationship with Ota. This is the thing that always sticks with me. And Mati's just inability to accept responsibility, because I was like this for a long time. Like for 10 years, it's like, why does my life suck so much? Like, it can't be because I make terrible decisions, right? Like, that can't be why. It must be because other people are out to get me. Like, it must be someone else's fault or my upbringing's fault. At some point, you can't lean on that for forever. Like, you can't. And, so I've been there. And just the absolute, like, pieces. You guys know I hate people being like, oh my gosh, this shattered me, this broke me. But and I think it's because we use it too much. Like, but the moment when Ota is writing to Kian, and who's not alive, and saying, I have sent the most unreliable man in the world to fix this. I would have chosen a stranger over sending Mati to do this, knowing where they started and how close they are, and how much they love each other. Even then, Ota talking like that about Mati, it hurts my heart still, still to this day. And that's the stuff I think about. I'm like, how did he make it to where it is so affecting to me? Like, just throwaway lines. I've sent the most unreliable man in the world. I'd send a stranger before I sent this guy. And it's just like, he's not wrong at all. And yet my heart breaks for Mati. My heart breaks for their relationship. It's just so hard. And so I've left a ton for y'all to talk about. But that part of the series is my absolute favorite. The friendship between those two, and the fact that Mati just can't, he just can't take responsibility, and should never have made it there. And Ota bears that ultimate responsibility. So it's absolutely tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. Sorry, Anitha.
Go ahead, Tori and Pete. I have a lot to talk actually. If I start, I'll not give you a chance. After you both finish, I'll talk.
Pete?
Sorry. There's so much in this book. Like, there's the friendships, there's the leadership, there's the relationships around Ota and Mati that are so rewarding in their own way. And specifically, I think I'll talk about Ota and his wife's relationship from book 2, book 3, all the way on was so.
Kian is tremendous.
Yeah, she's amazing. And he basically, he didn't find her on the side of the road, but he found her on the side of the road as he was traveling. And it's like, wow, that she never would have thought she would have been in the position she was in the end. But their relationship in particular was heartwarming. I mean, from the very start, it was just, she was like, I'm practical. You're gonna get me killed. Leave. Bye. There wasn't ambition. It was such a different, she was almost the complete opposite of Liat from the first one, who was like, oh, this is, you could do great things. I want to stick by this. And then Kian actually coming to, be with him in the end of Betrayal was just.
Well, I mean, it kind of points to, and as somebody who, with relationship history and being married for quite a while now, like the what we think we want versus the what we need in life in terms of relationships. To me, that was at first, in that first book, I hated Liat. I hated her from day one.
Yes.
Hated her. And I could see that she just felt so like she didn't see Ota for who he was and what he needed. She saw him for what she could get out of him. And that's
how common is that?
Yeah. I mean, I loved the two of them contrasting, and it kind of felt like that exact representation of, when you're in the heat of the moment and you're like, I want this person when you're young. And then you get older and you're like, but actually, I really need this kind of a person. And Kian just being such an incredible anchor for Ota. I mean, you see that in the way that he writes to her even after she's passed away. That first letter in the beginning of chapter 4, I bawled. I literally came back to the series after several months. I opened the book, read the letter, and just sat there and cried for 10 minutes. Best off-screen character death of all time.
Seriously. And we always talk about one of the reasons that people, one of the many reasons that people like Steven Erikson and Malazan is they always talk about his subversion of tropes.
Mhm.
Abraham does that so well in this series. Just like Joanna and I were talking about in the chat, the underdog wins. What do you mean the underdog doesn't come back and what do you mean the underdog comes back and screws it up worse? What? That's not what fantasy is. When Kian finds out that he's the freaking emperor, right? Or he's the scion of the emperor, that's not what happens. She's like, oh, okay, I'm going to help you get through this. She's like, you get out, get out, get out. And he's like, what? Get out. Like, I know what that means. That means that we're going to be killed at any moment. Bye. Like, I don't need. And you're just like, what? Like, that's not how that works. Like, that's not what we have been trained as fantasy readers to understand what is coming with the familiar tropes that these have. And I just love that he does that so many times. And at the end, when freaking his son's Donat's wife, who's like, yeah, you can go ahead and burn Ota's letters like you like he said, but I'll leave you. So, but he said, okay, he's dead. If you burn those, I'm gone. Like even every character's so good. Every character's so good. I love it.
And I love the emphasis on relationships where people know each other that well. I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's not usually that depth.
For sure. Tremendous.
We went on a tangent, Pete. Do you want to go back to anything?
I think with another thing with their relationship was her support in Autumn War. Just like seeing her and seeing Aya's relationship with her parents, and then how Kian guided Ota as he felt like disconnected from his daughter, to try to guide him back, was also like a really, really heartwarming moment for me. Just because, like, I don't know, there are worries that I have for when I have kids and growing up. I mean, I feel like I have issues growing apart from people that I'm not seeing every day anyways. So that sort of support is something that's just like really heartwarming for me. It's like a, thing to wish for almost.
I'm writing bullet points for what I need to talk.
I wanted to pull something Joanna set up here too about Mati. One of the reasons that I find Mati so, and when I say that I like a character, that doesn't mean that I agree with everything that they do or that I don't think they're infuriating at some point. So I want to make that clear. I do find Mati infuriating at multiple points.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Mati is a very relatable character in the sense that I think many of us have felt that kind of like desperation to break out of someone's shadow, whether it's your parents or a friend or in a relationship or whatever it is. There's that painful desperation that says, I want to prove that I'm worth something. And I think that's what Mati really embodies, because if you look back at book one, even setting it up, how Ota kind of, he's going to back the underdog. Well, that gave Mati like, so I can do this and I'm worth something. But then everything that he goes through in the rest of his life proves the opposite in a lot of ways. Like even with Liat, he was the second, she was with him after she was with Ota, and then she also left him. So he's kind of the like side fling, in that relationship. And then as they continue on and get older, I think as he's getting older and older, he's feeling more and more desperation because he's still not able to prove that he's worth anything in Ota's shadow. And I think that's what drives him to make a lot of the very desperate decisions that he makes, especially in Price of Spring, and even in Autumn War too, at the end. So anyway, that's one of the reasons why I find Mati very compelling.
Yeah, a lot of that kind of in my read through with you like last year, I felt like that I was a lot more focused on Ota the first time around, and this time I was a little bit more focused on Mati, of just like, understanding a lot more, because like the first read through of Price of Spring, I was so frustrated with Mate. I'm like, dude, stop thinking about Ota so much. Just it's I that was the slowest parts of the books to me, and I was a lot more engaged this time around, so it didn't really feel as slow. But I felt like how obsessed he was with Ota hit me a lot harder this time. Of just like, wow, you really need to get a life outside of this. Like
I think
you have issues.
when Marty first met Ota, he was 8 years old, and he, I mean, Ota is the only one helped him when he was getting abused in that school, if we can call it that, or discipline, strict discipline. So he became very impressionable. He No one told him that to idolize Ota, that is his own brain doing that. So he became obsessive. I think that's very difficult to get over it.
So you're saying, much like Twilight, Mati was into Titan at a young age.
Okay, let's move on from that before I throw.
One more thing before Anitha goes on her screed, because we saw her Apple Notes. It's like 8 things. I love Balasargeist from book 3, like the prologue of book 3, where he is just like, there's no reason that anybody should have these gods in their pockets, and he tells his soldiers, do you know why they haven't destroyed us? Because they haven't chosen to yet. Like, the only reason we're still here is because they haven't decided to just nuke us, which is, basically what the Ondat are. And so some of the most interesting discussions I've had have been about Balasargeist and his plan, because his plan is 100% genocide. But he is also 100% right that if he does not get rid of every single person who is able to do this, exactly what happens, like will happen. There is no choice. Like, there is no option. Like, either he gets rid of every single person who can bind.
Turi's internet is.
Every single person who can bind an Ondat, or at some point somewhere down the line, the Galtic Empire will be, nerfed. And a lot of people are like, well, who cares? Because they're the expansionists, whatever. It's like, okay, well, why do we get to decide which ones get genocided? Like, why? Like, okay, they're the aggressors, so it's okay we genocide them. Like, that's not how that works. Like, it's just not. And so Balasargeist is absolute single-minded, because a lot of times in fantasy we don't like single-minded characters, like, oh, it's too one note. But I think Geist's single-minded focus is fascinating to me. Like, he's clearly doing things that he does not like. He doesn't like that he's having to do this. He just has chosen himself as, I'll be the one that bears it. And it's because he saw his entire village drowned when he was a kid by an Ondat. So he's like, okay, I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again. And you know what? He's right. They shouldn't have the gods in their pockets. Like, who decided that they get to that they get to be the arbiters of who lives and who dies? So I think the whole discussion around Geist and his plan is fascinating. Like, I think it's, and there's not really a right answer, because people who completely disagree with him, like Pete, don't you and I get an argument about this all the time? Because Pete is a pacifist hippie. He wants to run around in like a drum circle and like talk about it or something, playing He Who Kumbayas.
I think ideally everybody would have Ondat, right?
Oh, an Ondat race.
Balasargeist is the one thing I disagree with Alan, actually, because I see him as the villain in the third book when he is committing genocide. He's by then we don't know that he'll be turned out to be true. Actually, there will be female poets as well, but he was killing innocents, children. So I saw him as villain. I
He's definitely a
I
villain.
did not like him at all. He is villain actually. He committed the crime. It was surprising for me that Ota was able to forgive him. Ota was able to be friends with him. That is tough for me. I wouldn't be able to forgive him that easily. Yes, in fourth book it turned out he is true. There are female poets, but that only happened later because of Balasar's actions, because of him killing all boys or men.
Yes, Alan.
Before we move on, I forgot about my other thing that I love more than anything. But I don't. It's not related to this, so I just wanted to say that.
It's not related to LPQ, or it's not related to Balasar, guys.
We'll get to them.
Can I start my thing?
No,
It's it's a crime. It's a crime we did not talk about it on. It's been 1 hour. We did.
we're getting to it, Don. Hold on, Anitha. Let me just say the last thing, and then we'll talk about it, Don, all day. I knew you were going with it, Don. That's why I didn't say anything about it. I knew you loved it, Don. I know. The Long Price Quartet. The fact that we find out, because it reminded me when you're like, how does he forgive? The weight that Oda's been carrying all these years, the fact that the reason that he has to make it work with Balasar guys is because he murders Heshai to stop the Andot from destroying the Galtic Empire. He commits murder that he doesn't want to do, that he's been carrying for 60 years, 40 years. He's been carrying that the guilt of having to commit that murder. And if the Andot, like if Galt is destroyed anyway, what was it all for? Why did he do it if Galt's destroyed anyway? That as his driving force, when we finally find that out in the fourth book, that he cannot allow this to happen. Like, because otherwise he committed that crime for no reason. Like, just broke my heart for Ota. So good. So
Well,
good.
and kind of going along with that too, one of the things that happens in book one that almost put me off of the series is when Seedless takes the woman's child.
Sad trade, yeah. I never fault anybody if they
It's on
walk
my
in.
list.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about with that, because I thought a lot about that, because that really, as a mom, like, you know, I put the book down for a bit after that, because it is incredibly hard to read. And I think if it had not fit the story or not had consequences, I would have absolutely hated the series, period. I think what it does, it is very hard to read, and I think it's meant to be. I think what is hard about it is that he's essentially proving Balasar Geis's concern, because the Andot are able to take anything from anyone that is most precious. You know what I mean? Like there is no line that these Andots cannot cross. And I think that now looking at the series as a whole, that really kind of sets the stage for why we have the war over the Andots at all. And yeah, so I thought that despite the fact that it is a very difficult scene, it's not without consequence and it's not without meaning. And that's why I didn't DNF the series for it.
Damn it, my second point, you took it away.
Sorry.
It's okay. I loved the first book. I know people say first book will be Daniel Abraham's first books are slow, but I did not feel it that way. It was 5 stars for me, if not for that scene. It traumatized me so much. Even till it happened, I was like, please, Amit, stop it. I was like, I think it's more than the action, the way they did it. Picking up some innocent girl from out of the corner of the world and lying to her, bringing her to this that, okay, we are getting you. I mean, there is your father of your child. You will be meeting him. In that lie, what they did was, oh my God, when that was happening, I screamed along with that girl. It triggered me a lot. And yes, if Abraham did not hadn't followed up with the thematic elements after that scene, maybe I would have stopped after reading. Even if I had read, it wouldn't have been my favorite. But he explained us why he had to do that. He showed the what, why androids are dangerous. They are like nuclear bombs essentially. He did a fantastic job with that. Even now, I did not increase my rating from 4 stars to 5 stars, but I understand it was 5 stars for me mentally, but I did go through that trauma when I was reading it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Pete mentioned something about the difference between Layat and Kian. My first point is defense of Layat.
Liat sucks. Though, good for Liat in book 3. Like, everyone who reads book 1 says, I hate Liat. I don't want to say just wait because I don't want to, like, spoil that she comes back. But, like, I end up liking Liat in book 3. Like, she is doing what she has to do. And the tragedy of her son, like, exactly what she wants to avoid happening. That scene with Liat and Kian after
Yeah.
after her kid is killed, like,
So good.
terrible.
Okay, in book 1, actually, many people hated Liat. And in book 2, when Kian appeared, they compared Kian and Liat. But in book 1, Liat was a 16-year-old girl, actually. She did not know anything other than her mom pushing her to find a good man to marry. That's the only thing. She did not know about the world. She did not have her own personality. Later, she learned that everything from Amat and, developed into her own person. So I understand why she left Ota, because Ota was lowly labor. I, you know, I did not, what is the word, begrudge her
Mhm.
for the choice, you know, because she was taught that way. She was taught to, look for a better life. Every woman in both real life, even in this book, is taught for their own survival. So I understand the choice. I don't hate her for that,
Mhm.
for wanting a better life.
Mhm.
I love Ota. So if she broke Ota's heart. So if I think from Ota's perspective, I should hate her. Even then, I did not. Abraham did a fantastic job. When you look at it that way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Especially when you look at Liat's growth from book 1 to book 3, like with Ahmad's training and stuff. One of the tiny details that I feel like slips through the cracks sometimes. She was the one that was in Sarah Kiet with her warehouses and her business that was preventing the rise of the Gultic influence after Ota left. Like,
Mhm.
she's the one that carried the flag there, which,
MVP.
yeah, really, really small detail that made me like her a lot more
Mhm.
once we got to her in Autumn War.
Mhm.
Okay, and my third point, friendships. Abraham, it's not only about, yes, Otis and Marty's, friendship was so well done, the complexity of that, but he also did it with other characters like Amat and her boss. You know,
Mhm.
Amat knows her boss is committing something bad, including colliding with these girls, and did it. But they share a bond. I like the scene between them, the complex respect between them, fondness between them, and also between Ota and Sinja.
Mhm.
It was never on page what happened between Sinja and Kian, but it was just mentioned, something happened, Sinja loves Kian. But Ota forgave him and was able to remain friends with him. That was
Mhm.
also, was like, that is surprising to me actually.
Mhm.
And this is one of the best husband and wife relationships I have read. Not just because, Ota loves Kian and Kian supports Ota. Something happened there. there was a hint of love triangle there. Not sure how much Kian, reciprocated Sinja's feelings, but there was a disturbance. Irrespective of having that, they retained their bond. You know, that was such, just because good husband and wife relationship doesn't mean that everything has to be good. Everything has to be perfect. Obviously, there was a problem. They got over that. I really like that.
Alan and I have a very strong disagreement about this character.
You look, I'm on the side of angels, Tori. Most people agree with me and hate Sinja. It was not until Anitha was just talking that I even remembered Sinja existed. I had purged him from my brain.
I've been planning on bringing him up for you the entire discussion.
I hate Sinja. What does he do other than freaking? I hate that there's this thing between Kian and Ota because of this loser who is just the worst. I freaking hate Sinja. I hate him. I'm so glad he dies somewhere. Doesn't he? Doesn't he die somewhere? I don't even remember what happens to him.
I don't think
I don't
so.
remember what happens to him. Don't care. Oh wait.
Abraham,
He go blind and die on a ship somewhere off screen?
Probably.
Good.
Yes, he did.
Sinja sucks.
Abraham fleshed out every character well. Sinja is the only character where I was like, I had that not satisfied. Okay, what the hell is happening? What is he doing?
Look
I
at all these
understand.
allies marshaling against you, Tori.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, Tori.
I have had unpopular opinions before. That's
Oh my
fine.
God. Why please? I'm not sure I've heard this from you. I'm taken aback. How could you like Sinja?
I still remember the Voxer message I got from you, Alan, when I was reading Long Price Quartet, and I said something about Sinja, and you were so mad immediately. So I want to, first of all, to clarify again, when I say that I like a character, I'm not out here going to be like, oh, I loved Sinja's character, or he was my favorite. No, obviously not. I agree actually with you, Anitha, that I feel like he was one of the less fleshed out characters in the series. Completely agree with that. I find Sinja's situation compelling to read. That's where I say I like Sinja's character. What I like about it is, again, like Anitha was talking about, I enjoy reading situations and characters where there is a chink in the armor. We have this amazing relationship between Kian and Ota, and I think Sinja makes it real. I think he makes it not perfect. You know what I mean? Because there is no relationship on the face of the planet that is ever perfect. And I think without Sinja, Kian and Ota become a little too perfect. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense, but also sometimes I also appreciate the fact that he loves Kian enough to accept that she is with Ota, to actually have a fairly decent relationship with Ota and help him, be loyal to him. To me, that says a lot about Sinja's character, that he's willing to, okay, I love her, and I'm going to do whatever I can to support her husband and her in their pursuits. I mean, he literally puts himself in incredible amounts of danger on their behalf.
Also, sorry, Tori, he waited until they killed Danat to save, the first guy, Liat's son, to save Danat. Because he thinks Kian will appreciate that. Because the Liat's son is obviously troubles Kian.
Mm-hmm.
So he thinks because of that, he waited until they kill that guy. First son of, I don't remember his name.
I don't either. So, yes, and I think it's an example of kind of there's a similarity there between, in my opinion, Sinja and Mati, where they're both trying to fix something and they mess it up. Mm-hmm. absolutely makes the wrong decision there. And that's, again, when I say that I enjoy reading a character or I like a character, it doesn't mean that I'm like, everything they do is the best. It's amazing. Like, I like Hilo in the Greenbone saga, and I wanted to punch him in the face so many times. Like, so, you know, like, I feel like Sinja's an interesting character, and I feel like he does add to the relationships as a whole and what the series is trying to portray in relationships.
Thoughts, Pete?
Thank you. I think with Sinja, he's most compelling when he is with Balasar Geis, right? Because he's very much in a, to reference Hamilton, talk less, smile more position.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one wrong step and he's gonna die. It's a terrible situation, but it's one of those things of he doesn't have a choice and he has to struggle every step to plan out and try to to figure things out.
He does have a choice. He could have get killed. It's better to die than committing genocide. Sorry. Go ahead.
Is it better to die than try to save the woman you love or something? Like that's where he was coming from. Like it's either he knows from the get-go they're gonna come for.
So all I'm saying is he does have a choice. He picked that route.
He does have a choice, but he chose the one that will presumably get him the most options later on down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I hate him.
Which
that's fair.
I feel like
okay, I want to quickly talk about 2 points before we move on to Eden. One is what happened in third book with Marty, when Marty is going to do that poet thing and create, what is that ritual? I forgot. There is a name to that.
Binding.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Thank you. When Marty was going to binding, he kept thinking, his thought process was like how to destroy, Galt, how to win over them, not the safety of them actually. So I kept thinking, okay, Marty, you're wrong. That's not your primary motivation to create a poet. I was so troubled with that. And I want thoughts like that or actions like that to be called out actually. But many books don't call out those thoughts, and those characters get away with people thinking like they're good people. But here in this case, Abraham called him out immediately by creating sterile. Thank you.
Yes.
At that moment, I became fan of Abraham. Became my favorite author actually. I loved first 2 books, no doubt about it. But that moment when Abraham called out Marty's actions, Marty's thoughts by creating sterile, he had me in his clutch. Nobody can top Abraham for me for doing that, for executing that scene. I wanted that so badly, from not just in this book, even in my life growing up. I want people to call people's actions actually when they do something bad, when they thought something bad. That's not okay. Don't let him get away with that thing. Abraham did that. I was like instantly, okay, he is my favorite author. That next point I want to talk about is,
hold on, Anitha. I'm commenting on that one. Let me comment
okay.
on that point. No, I agree. That and that's where it happened for me too, Anitha, because it completely recontextualized the first 2 books also. Because then we see that the reason they go through that school is so that they don't end up having those feelings when they're binding it, because because that's the consequences. And I too was shocked that it happened. I was shocked also that he was willing to have that consequence for the world state. Like, a lot of authors aren't willing to say, okay, so here's how I'm changing the entire world by making every single every single male of the Kayate or of Galt sterile. Like, no one can, no Galtic males can have babies anymore. Like, that's just who does that? Because we see people pull back consequences all the time in like character deaths. Like authors aren't even willing to commit to killing somebody, let alone, hey, this is something I've got to live with, writing anything in the future. And I thought that was bold. That was ballsy. Sorry, go ahead.
And you are 100% right. Evie. Abraham is like so much better than Hobb. I mean, Hobb let characters get away with so many things. I still hate. I can't use that, but I still hate her for that. Okay. Another point I want to talk about, another character I want to talk about is Ia. Ia's character is so similar to Idan's character, but Ota, as her father, gave her a lot of freedom to study, to explore, to do, to do this for the, uh, to save humanity. That's what I wanted to say. So, this is a patriarchal society. Women have no place, no role to play other than, getting married to someone for alliances. But Abraham executed in such a way that by giving ally to female characters, that way he created agency for female characters. Curtis Craddock also did that in Tyson Kingdom's trilogy by giving John Claude. That's totally different topic anyway. But I I loved Abraham for that. It's such a parallel between Idan and Ia's character because both are daughters of what is Ota's role? I mean,
Kai.
at the end he
I'm not
became
sure, yeah.
Kai. Sorry. So both the daughters of Kai, but how Idan's life went because of being in that society, because she had lot of this, why should I not become Kai or the female version of Kai, why I am more intelligent than my brothers, that the thought of I related so much to Idan. Oh my god, because lot of times I felt that growing up, the discrimination when compared to our male counterparts. When you're the smartest person in your, I hope nobody in my family watches this. When you're smartest person in your family, when you are smartest person on the table, even then people don't listen to you. That, oh my god, I completely understand the choices Idan made. While, as Tori said, while I disagree with, while I don't approve the actions Idan made, I completely understood the choices she made. Oh my god, and I loved Idan is one. I when I talk about LPQ, I cannot tell people how much I love Idan because it's a huge spoiler. We cannot spoil that she'll come back in fourth book, but Idan is like almost. Ota is obviously my favorite character ever in fantasy, but Idan is like super close behind that. Also, can you guys remind me why Ota chose Idan to send after Ia?
Because she's one of the only ones that knew everything that was going on.
Yeah.
Anybody else would have leaked it to the press.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I also want to point out that, in my opinion, like the coolest moment in this entire 4 books, the coolest, word choice specific, is when, is it Ia or Aya?
I say Aya.
Either or.
I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Pete. When she shows up with her Ondot at the end of Price of Spring, it's like, she's just so cool. This is so cool. She walked in like the queen she is, and she held this Ondot and she fixed things, and then she's like, I don't need that. And I'm like, I love in a way that like we've built toward that the whole time, that it doesn't matter which gender it is, it's the person who is best suited to do what they're doing. And I love that because Io is just that was one of my favorite moments of the series where I was just like, yes. And it was just the way that Abraham wrote the Ondat and Aya, and how it's this, that reflection of Aya in her binding, and just, it was so cool. I loved it.
I love the thing with Aya that I like is because that is one place that Mati wins. Like, Mati's closer to Aya than her dad is to her. And it's sad that Mati acknowledges that is a reason that he is also close to Aya, because he's like, oh, I've got this over Ota. What a sad man. And yet he really does love Aya. Like, he is a great uncle to her. Like, he's the one that teaches her how to use the grammar, how to do the binding. Like, he teaches her. So it's just, people can be two things. Like, he is at the same time super petty, because he's like, oh, suck it, Ota. Like, your daughter likes me better than you. And that's because Ota is too traditionalist in that in that regard. And the conflict between Aya and Ota, it's hard for me to get on board, because I'm like, what do you want him to do, Aya? Like Ota is doing literally the only thing that the circumstances are allowing. Like I don't know what else she wants from him. This is the only way the world can continue. Like, I'm sorry that upsets you. And I'm not trying to be callous, because I do completely understand where Aya's coming from. But it's like, I just don't know. I don't know what she wants from him. But it sucks to watch him, struggle there with his daughter. But I mean, I agree. Go ahead, Pete.
I think it comes down to two different parts. So first of all, there is the Mati influence of Mati offering another way. But I think first comes... there is a lot of young idealism to her, which is by no means a bad thing. We all have that at some point. We all want the world to be better. We all, especially when we're young, we all think we have all the answers to a certain extent. And this is a place where she thinks and we think we know the answers, but we don't realize how little of the answers we know. But we just know how we want the world to be. And that is something to be praised, despite it not being able to, I don't know how I want to phrase this. It's still half formed, but it is something that is to be lauded because we want something, right? I think especially reading Cicero and some other things, I'm like, it is better to want something specific to move forward with than to only want to stand in the same spot. And that is something to be praised, because that is something that allows you to move forward and figure out a solution. And that's what she does with Mati, and figuring out how to come back, how to bring the Ondat back so she can let it go, but to fix everything.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, completely agree.
It's just it's a series of complicated relationships. It's really good. It's a great series.
Yeah. So all of this hour and 40 minutes to say, book good, read book. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people might originally be turned off by the fact that this isn't your traditional fantasy series where you have all of these really out the gate action beats, and there's a lot of, it appears as if there's not a lot of tension in the beginning. There is. It's just more subtle than a lot of other series that I've read. And I think I know that this series has given me the most growth as a reader, I think, of anything that I've read since starting BookTube, because I realized that I was able to step outside my comfort zone a lot more than I thought I was with this series, because I'm usually more of an action-focused reader. And I surprised myself by loving this series so much. And it definitely expanded my awareness of what I like and what I'm willing to try in fantasy and still love. I mean, this is easily in my top 3 series now. And it couldn't be more different than the other ones. I mean, there are some similarities with Malazan, in fairness, but yeah, it's so good. Yes, that is the one thing we haven't talked about, partially because I found this incredibly disturbing, and it's one of the reasons why the fourth book is not my favorite. I love the fourth book, and I think it's brilliant, but I can't get over the baby Ondat.
The corruption of someone's absolute desire to have a child. Like it is, like it is so, and being, about to have a baby in any time from six to 8 weeks. Like it is, what a corruption of something that is just so meaningful for so many people. Like this woman wanted a child more than anything, and Mati gives her the grammar. Are you a moron? Like this is the stupidest thing that Mati does. Like what you can't do that, Mati. Moderation has to be the thing with the bindings, and you give it to Banjit.
I mean, if you look, though, it's a perfect repeat of history because there's nothing new under the sun, right? So Mati gives the underdog the grammar. Where have we seen that before?
Oh my God.
And I think it's Mati's very misplaced desire, again, to let the underdog, like, yes, you can do this because I feel like I need to prove that I can do this. So Banjit is, I think, a very potent manifestation of Mati's failures, and that he's not willing to stop the cycle.
It also shows that Mati did not learn from what happened with Sterile. He did not understand. He was angry with Sterile actually for doing that, as if Sterile is the villain, and
he's angry with Ota. It's Ota's fault.
Yeah.
He did not understand what he did wrong. He did not learn from that. He was just petty. He directed his entire anger towards Ota and refused to learn from what happened. Actually, he did not. Actually, that's where I think fourth book is where I started. Hate is the strongest word. Disliking Marty, because he did not learn from his actions and what happened.
Where him and Ota are shouting at each other, like when they finally meet face to face, and Marty's like, "What do you know about it? Like everything you've done has come easy for you." And Ota's like, "Why are you this way, Marty? Of course, you just did the exact same thing." Like, it was heartbreaking for me. It hurt me so bad. But the Banjit thing, and her desire to have a child, like counterbalanced against the story that Idan tells about how she had to let go of that dream because she knew it wasn't ever going to happen again. She knew it wasn't going to happen, and she had, for a while, she kept that baby lamb as like keeping that dream alive. That was so heart-wrenching. Like, and yet this is a woman who is a serial killer. Like,
yep.
I mean, it's so
really annoying when authors write characters that you hate as human beings.
She has. I mean, I was always behind Idan. I'm like, Idan, like, I get it, lady. Like, I get it. You go. I'm like, I don't know why you're killing your nerd mining brother. Like, he doesn't even want it.
That was so sad.
Like, he's just like, "Oh, I love these mines. Let's check the tunnels and the charts." Like, and then it's like, Idan, come on, man. He didn't even want anything. It's the other two brothers that are the ones who are clamoring. It made me so sad. But to see her turn around, what?
Every prologue just hits hard.
I know. But watching Idan living with her mistakes for 30 years, where she regrets what she did. She does not.
From that, learning from that.
The anti-Mati, who has learned nothing. But I do love the end, the final scene with Ota and Mati, where Ota visits him and they just look out over the city together in the dark, from his cell. And yeah, we could have gotten more closure or something like else, but I thought it was really good. Them just sitting together and ignoring, just for that moment, let's ignore all that's happened and let's just be here together. And wish that we were kids again, because it's really what they're doing. They're like, look,
even in that scene, actually, Ota knows that his actions are what brought Marty to this place. I'm not sure Marty even then learned something, that his actions are what brought him there.
oh no, Marty hasn't learned anything by the end. He still thinks he's right.
Yeah, he still carried grudge with Ota, actually. His
So-
admiration turned to grudge.
So hard. I'm reading this series this year with Chris, because he's read also Christopher Navo. So I think we're gonna reread it at the same time, because I wanted to read it last year, just wasn't able to.
Tempting for me to join you, but I have too many commitments.
No, I completely.
You'll probably join him anyways.
You got to read Great Coats with me, Anitha.
Yeah.
When are you guys reading Greatcoats?
I don't know. It'll be a couple months or so before we start, because I've got to get out from under these. I have too many arcs that I signed up for, and I'm trying to clear up my neck.
Give me some extra notice instead of saying, Anitha, I am going to read after this. At least 2 weeks notice.
Yeah, I'll give you at least 2 weeks of this for sure. The problem is I'm reading Gaijin currently, which is too long, so I'm reading parts of Gaijin and then continuing with something else, and then going back to Gaijin. But Gaijin is, a 1,200-page book is a ludicrous choice for current.
You are reading entire book instead of like dividing into 3
Oh
parts.
no, I read. I still have it on audio. I was reading the first 300 pages, like till book 2, doing both. But now I'm just listening to Gaijin on audio, and I'm reading something else. When I finish that, I'll probably finish book 2 of Gaijin, and then move on and listen to Gaijin only. So I'll be listening to Gaijin until I'm done with it. But
Okay. We'll talk more about that after ending the stream.
anyway, thanks for having me. I love talking about this series.
Yeah, I knew once I had finished the series that, and like Pete and I were already talking about it, and Anitha was lurking in our conversation when we were reading, and I think this is the type of series where I knew it would be easier for me to have a live stream discussion with other people who love the series than it would be to make a video review of it, honestly, because there's so much there that I just have a hard time articulating it all by myself. So I appreciate you guys jumping on and talking about it, because I definitely think that more people need to read this series, especially people that have been in the genre for like some time. Like if you're new to the genre, okay, fine, maybe don't start with LPQ. But
what I would say also is, one thing that does frustrate me is that people are willing to trust, like, for example, like big authors like Stephen Erickson. Like, Toll the Hounds for me is a chore, but I mean, I trust Erickson, and I enjoyed the end of it, whatever. And people will read, like, they'll actively be like, I hate this part in Rhythm of War. Like, I don't care about photons or anything. But they trust it because they like Sanderson, and they'll read 1,200 pages of it. This entire series is 1,200 pages. Like, I just urge people to, because I'm not trying to invalidate people's experience. I'm not. Like, you can not like something. But, like, I really do believe that if you read all 4 books, you would not walk away not having liked this series. For most people, I think most people, if they read the whole thing, they would walk away with a positive experience. And it's just weird to me that people they'll trudge through a 1,200-page book, but won't trudge through a 1,200-page series. So it's just weird to me. So if you're watching this, guys, well, no one's watching at this point. I should have said the non-spoiler section. Dang
actually,
it.
we've still got quite a decent audience.
No, I know, but anybody who's watching it now has already read it.
Sure.
I should have said a non-spoiler. But yeah, so that is my opinion. So anybody trying to like proselytize and get people to read it, tell them that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, to add to what Alan said, people talk about best character writers and mention Hobb and Abercrombie. I read both of them, and I agree with them to some extent, but they also should read Abraham and Parker because they are top of my list.
So even if like Anitha is nicely, not like dunking on your favorites. But if you are someone that likes like really good characters, Abraham is someone who should be in that array of authors that you
100%.
find.
Yep.
And KJ Parker Standalones has fantastic character work as well. So yeah, I agree. I haven't read. I've only read one Abercrombie book, and I haven't read Hobby. So.
Well, and if you are a character-driven reader like me, this series will prove to you whether you are or are not, in my opinion, because like I had to lean very heavily on the characters in the first book, and that was fine. I was like, you know what? This isn't like the same level of action and tension that I'm used to in a lot of the books I read, and that's okay because I can see the depth of these characters, and I trust that Abraham is going to be doing something really big with it. So, yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys very much for hanging out with me and for talking about LPQ. I know it was a chore for all of you to struggle to talk about the series.
I had to wake up.
Well, same. I was getting on here at like 9:45 this morning. I was like, why did I do this at 10 o'clock in the morning? So thank you to everybody in the chat too, who's still watching, and everybody who watched earlier. If you're watching the replay, thank you for hanging out with us. Again, go down in the description box below. There are links to all 3 of my guests' channels. I did that backwards this way. And you should go and subscribe to all of them if you are not already. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.